During the summer when I was 10, my sister disappeared. She vanished while delivering meals to our parents. There were no surveillance cameras, nor had anyone seen her, since it was originally my task to deliver the meals. My mother has not spoken a word to me ever since. 15 years later, I became a police officer and repeatedly retraced the route my sister took that day. Bit by bit, the past resurfaced in my mind, gradually piecing together a heartbreaking truth. August 10, 2009. That was the day my sister went missing. Back then, we lived in a dilapidated courtyard at the edge of town. My father worked in a nearby chemical plant. My mother ran a bustling convenience store by the roadside, busy especially in the summer when many people came to buy ice pops and ice cream, and my father would help out after his shift. They were often so busy that they hardly had time to eat. Thus, throughout that summer vacation, it was almost always me, at 10, cooking for the whole family. The kitchen had no air conditioning, just an old fan. Once the water boiled, the steam would mix with the hot air from the fan, making it unbearably hot. I was always drenched in sweat while cooking. On the day of the incident, it was particularly hot. After cooking, I felt a bit of heatstroke, with no one else at home, and my grandmother living in the next courtyard. A stern woman who was neither helpful nor pleasant to deal with. I dared not bother her. I washed my face, fought off the discomfort, and served my sister some cold noodles to eat first, then packed our parents' meals in a lunchbox and put it in a basket. After eating a few bites, my sister said, "Sis, you lie down and rest by the fan. I'll deliver the food today. I know the way. I'll finish my noodles when I get back." From our house to the store was a 10-minute walk down a single road, not a secluded path. I had walked it with her countless times before. Still, I was a bit worried. "Are you sure you can manage?" I asked, half lying down with a wet towel on my forehead. "Don't worry, sis, it's just a short walk. I'll be back soon." Without further discussion, she picked up the basket and headed out. She was thin from being frequently ill, her shoulder bones protruding under the strain of the basket. Her small figure looked so fragile. Before she left, she waved and said, "I'll be right back, and you better not eat my noodles." "Don't worry, I won't," I replied impatiently, gesturing for her to go, but she never returned. Do you think, if I had said I would eat her noodles, she would have hurried back to check? I wondered aloud. On January 9, 2024, I officially joined the city police department as a probationary officer. 9 months later, I discussed this agonizing cold case that had haunted me for 15 years with my mentor Mark. "When did you realize she was missing?" Mark asked. I rubbed my eyes and replied, "It must have been after 2 p.m. I had barely eaten a few bites of noodles before I fell asleep. I was woken up by a slap from my dad, even after all this time, but I still remember it vividly. The moment I opened my eyes, I was met with my father's uncontrollably furious face. "Why didn't you deliver the food? Do you want to starve us to death?" I burst into tears, crying out, "My sister went to deliver it already." Only after saying this did I notice the half-eaten noodles on the table and suddenly remembered that my sister hadn't come back yet. A chill crept up my spine, and the tears in my eyes were instantly sucked dry by panic. We searched everywhere. Back then, the surveillance network hadn't extended to that small road. Only the main roads were monitored. Our family was like headless flies, frantically searching everywhere. We even dragged the nearby pond 3 times with bamboo rafts but found nothing. People were hired to check the wells around, but there was no sign of her. After reporting to the police, they checked all the nearby surveillance cameras and found no suspicious individuals. They interviewed neighbors and villagers from the surrounding areas, but no one had seen my sister, and just like that, my sister disappeared. My mother beat me, crying hysterically on the ground. "How could you be so lazy? Why did you let her go instead of going yourself?" My grandmother, a devout Christian, said her Lord would not forgive a child who lost their sister due to laziness and selfishness. In his anger, my father kicked me 5 or 6 times, knocking me to the ground. The neighbors, unclear about the truth, didn't step forward to stop him. Instead, they pointed and gossiped about me. I walked to the road where my sister disappeared, standing stubbornly for 3 days, unblinkingly staring at the crossroad, hoping to see her small figure appear. But no miracle happened. After this incident, my family hardly spoke to me, especially my mom, who didn't speak to me at all for the next decade or so. After middle school, I stayed in a boarding school and would only go home on weekends to grab some money and change clothes, not daring to stay long. Over those years, I repeatedly walked the path my sister took to deliver the meal, carefully examining every blade of grass and tree, trying to find any clue, imagining countless possibilities. I was tormented. How long do you usually nap? Mark was very interested in this case as he flipped through the files I had provided. This case had been classified as a disappearance, unresolved for many years. It depends, sometimes it's long, sometimes short, but that day, I don't know why, I was especially tired and slept for over 2 hours until my dad woke me up. You said you had heatstroke. What did it feel like? Do you remember? I tried hard to recall how I felt that afternoon. I felt weak all over, sleepy, dizzy, lightheaded. After hearing this, Mark pondered for a moment. Have you ever considered that it might not have been heatstroke? My scalp tingled, and I looked at him wide-eyed. Symptoms of heatstroke include dizziness, ringing in the ears, headache, weakness in the limbs, nausea, vomiting, and cold sweats. Your symptoms don't seem like heatstroke, but rather like you had ingested. I was startled and blurted out before he could finish. Ingested what? Sleeping pills or some kind of sedative, Mark said meaningfully. How had I not thought of that? Indeed, the symptoms of taking sleeping pills shared many similarities with those of heatstroke. However, heatstroke has two distinctive features, nausea and cold sweats. But I remember clearly that day, I didn't experience those symptoms. Suddenly, all the hairs on my body stood on end. Back then, the adults, including the police, assumed that I was just being lazy, afraid of the heat, and had sent my younger sister to deliver the meal instead. Everything I said was taken as an excuse to shirk responsibility. They focused all their energy on finding her. Thus, they missed such an important clue. Master, how did you figure out that it wasn't heatstroke? I asked. The case finally had a breakthrough, and I was trembling with excitement. It's simple. From your story, it's clear that you and your sister have a deep bond. She's young, and you were worried about her going out to deliver food. Normally, you would have stayed awake until she returned, but you fell asleep instead, and for a long time. If your father hadn't woken you up, you might have slept even longer. Clearly, that's not normal, Mark said while reviewing the files. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I nodded. For many years, Mark was the first person to notice the extraordinary bond between my sister and me. After my sister disappeared, my father angrily pointed at me and yelled, "How could you sleep knowing your sister was missing? How could you not sleep yourself to death?" At that time, I couldn't understand why I had fallen asleep so deeply. I even hated myself for it. No one knew how much I loved my sister, and no one knew that our bond went far beyond the usual sibling affection. It wasn't just because we spent 24 hours a day together before I started school. It was also because, whether in the cold of winter or the heat of summer, we always stuck together, sharing hardships. Back then, our parents left us at home to run their business, leaving our grandmother to look after us. However, she was devoutly religious and often left us alone all day to attend church gatherings. So, by the age of 6, I was already cooking meals for my sister. Whether the meals were burnt or delicious, we shared them together. While other kids would cry for their mom, my sister would cry for her big sister. That day you sweated a lot, and you must have drunk a lot of water. The problem might have been in the water. Mark pointed at the cup in front of me. But who would drug a 10-year-old child? What for? I couldn't help but ask. As I spoke, two despairing possibilities crossed my mind. Does your family have any enemies? I shook my head. My parents are very amicable in their business dealings and rarely have conflicts. The only ruffian who doesn't get along with my family had an alibi that day. Just then, a commotion started outside. A couple had come to the police station to report their child missing. "Officer, our child is 8 years old and has autism. My husband took him for therapy, and he lost him on the way. Please, you must help us." The woman was frantic, almost to the point of kneeling. The man looked dejected and guilty, yet there was an undeniable relief in his demeanor. Seeing this, I had a pretty good idea of what had happened. Although I had been at the police station for less than a year, cases like this have already occurred several times. They mostly involve troubled children whose families cannot afford the costs of treatment or rehabilitation, or whose parents can no longer bear the continuous torment without any hope in sight, leading them to abandon their children. However, fearing societal judgment, they report to the police to keep up appearances. Despite this, I still thoroughly questioned the man about what happened. When we were passing by the coastal park, she saw someone feeding the seagulls and just wouldn't leave. I had no choice but to buy some feed for the seagulls. But in that brief moment when I turned around, she was gone. The child was lost around 5 p.m., right when the tide was high. They searched everywhere but couldn't find her. So they reported her missing. By now, it had been over 2 hours. If she had encountered any danger, it would only take a few minutes for her to lose her life. If she had run into human traffickers, 2 hours would have been enough to reach a bus or train station. It was too late. Even so, the police couldn't just do nothing. Mark had me immediately issue a missing person notice, quickly spreading it on social media with the disappearance location as the center. He also organized a team to search the major transport hubs and coordinated with 2 professional search and rescue teams to scour the coastline throughout the night. We did everything we possibly could. Now, it all depended on the child's fate. After the couple left with many thanks, Mark looked out at the dark night sky and said, "The chances of this child being alive are slim. It's only a matter of time before a body is discovered. Your sister has severe asthma, right? Is it possible?" I shook my head desperately in denial. No, our family has never resented my sister. After she went missing, I became the biggest sinner in my family. My mom hasn't spoken to me for over a decade. He looked at me and tapped the file. "What about your grandmother? How does she treat you and your sister?" I was shocked. "You suspect my grandmother?" Indeed, if it wasn't an enemy who drugged my water, it could only have been my parents or my grandmother, not entirely. "Just considering the possibilities and analyzing the case," he replied. "To be honest, not great, but there was a witness that day who said she was at a neighbor's house for a worship session, and she has an alibi." Mark was silent for a moment before asking, "Has really no one seen your sister? That road is quite secluded, and in the summer at noon, hardly anyone is around. There are only 3 shops by the road, 2 of which are barbecue restaurants that only open in the evening. The only other is a tea egg seller who is disabled and usually stays inside the shop, which is also closed at noon. So, no one has seen my sister." Mark shook his head repeatedly. This is truly bizarre. Even Mark was clueless, and the hope that had just sparked in me was dashed again. I stared at the photo of the missing child on the computer screen, the same age as my sister, with similarly striking black and white eyes, feeling incredibly heavy-hearted, seeing my low spirits. Mark encouraged me, "Yetta, don't give up. As long as a body hasn't been found, there is still hope that your sister is alive. Try to remember more details. We handle cases with boldness and attention to detail. Anything that has been done leaves traces. Maybe go home for a bit and see if you can recall anything." I nodded. When I left work, it was already late at night. My new rental was not far from my parents' house, and as I walked, I found myself on the road where my sister had disappeared years ago. The road, which once had only 2 or 3 shops, had been transformed into a bustling snack street. Even in the early hours of the morning, there are still shops open for business. Mark was right. Where there's a goose, there's a trace. There must be some details I've overlooked. What could it be? Tea eggs, 5 spiced tea eggs. The tea egg seller, William, who is blind, was shouting with his eyes closed, tilting his head to listen before calling out to me, "Is that you, Yetta? Finished work? Come have a tea egg. They're fresh out of the pot." We kids from our generation secretly called him Blind William. He has been selling tea eggs on this street for over 20 years. As children, my sister and I often sneaked money to buy his tea eggs. My mom forbade it, claiming that since he was blind, his food wouldn't be clean, and we could get sick. But as kids, as long as it tasted good, who cared? It's said that blind people have keen hearing, and it's true. Even though there weren't many people on this road at midnight, there were still 5 or 6 around. "It's me, Uncle William. I'll take 2 tea eggs." Back then, I bought 2 because one was for my sister and one for me. Now, I still buy 2 out of habit. "All right. I remember you and your sister always loved these tea eggs," he said, fishing out the eggs with a polite smile. His face wrinkled like a walnut. As he spoke the latter half, he realized something. His hand stiffened, and his smile turned awkward. "Still haven't found her, huh?" I started my stall late that day. Stayed inside. Couldn't help. "Sorry, Yetta." He touched his nose as he spoke, a sign of guilt. "It's not your fault. Because back then you didn't hear anything." I stressed the word, "hear." His hand trembled as he handed me the tea eggs, blocking me just as I was about to scan to pay. No need for money. I heard Yetta got her uniform, making our old neighborhood proud. These two are on me. Here, take them. Careful, they're hot. Blind William was notoriously stingy. All these years even his own brother and sister-in-law had to pay for tea eggs. But today he was treating me. Thank you, Uncle William. I carefully took the tea eggs and scanned to pay anyway, sending him $10 for the $2 each egg. As the alert, "You've received $10, sounded, Blind William got flustered, waving his hands. "You girl, why are you so disobedient? Why give so much?" I leaned in close and said, "I'm investigating my sister's disappearance, Uncle William. If you have any important clues to offer, the police department has a reward." His ears twitched, he paused, sighed, and said, "Your sister's situation is indeed pitiable. I don't want the reward. I'll only tell what I heard. I can't guarantee it's true. If it helps, just come buy tea eggs from me more often." Blind William's ears were famously sharp, able to identify people by their footsteps passing his stall. That afternoon, before the news of my sister's disappearance spread, an unexpected person passed by his stall. "Girl, observe more, recall more of the past details, and don't overlook anyone around you." That was Blind William's final piece of advice. September 25, 2024. The missing autistic child was found. The body was grotesquely swollen by the seawater, its organs hollowed out by fish and birds, a horrific sight to behold. Her parents were inconsolable, their grief palpable and profound. However, their cries were disturbingly loud, almost unnaturally so. Over the past 6 months at the police station, I've witnessed countless stories of joy and sorrow, reunions and partings. True sorrow and heartache, I've come to realize, are silent and sometimes don't even manifest in tears. Regrettably, we have no evidence to prove that the father, or the couple, deliberately put their child in danger. I've been feeling absolutely miserable. Perhaps it's because the victim in this case was the same age as my sister, or maybe it's because she, like my sister, suffered from an incurable disease, which always reminds me of her. I remember her smile and how she would sweetly call me sister as she jumped into my arms. I recall the helplessness and pain she felt with each asthma attack. I dream of knowing whether she's still alive. Is she all right? Where has she gone? I'm nearly driven mad by these thoughts. October 6, 2024. After my shift on National Day, I decided to track down the witnesses from back then, those who had testified that the scoundrel and my grandmother weren't present. Mark also mentioned, what if one of them had lied? So, if I could just get them to talk, maybe I could uncover the truth of what happened back then. That might lead me to find my sister. I first went to see the scoundrel's witness, Widow Jane, then I visited my grandmother's witness, Sister Monica. I spent the whole day working on both of them. The results were beyond my expectations. October 7, 2024, 9:30 a.m. I walked into a courtyard. There, an elderly woman with silver hair was drying radish strips crusted with salt. This old woman and her courtyard full of salty radishes were the root cause of my sister's asthma. I approached her step by step. In the fall of 2005, I contracted pneumonia. My parents took me to the City Children's Hospital and left my sister in your care. On the day of the incident, it was your turn to host the congregation at home. You were honored and busy entertaining the guests. And you forgot about my sister. She was hungry and tried to seek your help twice. But you shooed her out each time. Starving, she ate the salty radishes drying in the courtyard. Even after so many years, my heart still aches whenever I think of this. To stop my tears from falling, I slightly tilted my head up towards the sun. In the evening when we returned, we found that she had been eating salty radishes all day and couldn't find any water to drink, so she stayed thirsty. In a panic, my parents induced vomiting and forced her to drink a lot of water. She cried, struggling to breathe. Despite our efforts to remedy the situation, she suffered lasting damage. The high salt corroded her airways and digestive tract. She often couldn't eat, had difficulty breathing, and that's when her asthma began. You destroyed a healthy child. Don't you feel any remorse? Has your God forgiven you? The old woman's cloudy eyes met mine. If you truly repent, the Lord forgives. That dead girl is long gone. Why dredge up these old grievances? If it were up to me, I would never dry salty radishes again. I couldn't help but shout, my tears falling with my anger. The old woman snorted, even if her illness was my fault, Big girl, you were the one who lost her. What right do you have to accuse me? Don't think you're something special just because you wear a police uniform. We all hope that those who harm us or our loved ones will own up to their mistakes and apologize. Reality often proves otherwise. I found Monica, the grandmother who testified and went to church with you back then. I promised to help her apply for a reduced sentence, and she spilled everything. Over the years, she hasn't had a single peaceful night's sleep. I wonder, how about you, grandmother? I said, staring intently at the proud old woman. Her face turned pale instantly, and the freshly cut radish sticks she was holding dropped to the ground with a snap, gathering dust. But she quickly regained her composure. Don't think I don't know you're trying to trap me. Monica would never. She suddenly realized that this might be another one of my traps and swallowed the key words she was about to say. Would never do what? Never betray you, I pressed, keeping my eyes locked on hers. Her eyes darted away, a flash of panic crossing her face. She guessed right. My investigation wasn't going smoothly. Grandma Monica indeed refused to say anything. She hesitated, mentioning that she had sworn an oath before God 15 years ago never to alter her testimony and asked me to stop questioning her. I don't know what means my grandmother used to keep Monica tight-lipped, whether it was religious doctrine or personal loyalty. The disreputable witness, Widow Wang, cursed at me, saying that her testimony for that scoundrel years ago, which exposed hotel records, ruined her reputation, delayed her prospects of a good marriage, and ultimately forced her to marry an old bachelor, causing her great loss. Now, she feels jinxed just seeing a policeman. Despite her rude attitude, the credibility of her testimony was high, so it wasn't entirely fruitless. You don't have to say anything, I asked shakily. I just want to know, is she still alive? My parents, who live next door to my grandmother, came over when they heard the commotion. My younger brother, who was on vacation for the National Day, also came. He was born 3 years after my sister disappeared. At that time, our city hadn't relaxed the two-child policy yet. For him, my father had to resign from the state-owned company he had struggled to enter and pull some strings to re-register as a rural resident. After all, both spouses having rural status and the first child being a daughter allowed them to have a second child. This time, they won the gamble and had a boy. Why are you just having become a police officer, starting to target your own family? How did your mother and I end up raising such an ingrate? My father barked, stepping in front of my grandmother. I sneered, Dad, don't you want to know where my sister went? I'm just asking Grandma if she knows. Why are you overreacting? If she hasn't done anything wrong, investigating a bit to clear her name shouldn't be an issue, right? How dare you? My father raised his hand, furious. My mother sighed, speaking to me for the first time in over a decade. Eldest, it's all in the past. Mom doesn't blame you anymore. Stop investigating. Grandma is old and can't handle this. As she spoke, she tenderly stroked my brother's head and added, besides, your brother will need to take civil service exams in the future. You can't just climb up and pull the ladder up after you, can you? Even though the early autumn weather wasn't cold, and the sun shone on me, I shivered from the inside out. Today, before this, I reported to Mark the outcomes of my search for the 2 witnesses. He spoke to me earnestly. Yetta, you have 2 choices regarding this case. First, you could put the file away, let go of the matter, and just focus on your job, keeping things stable. Second, you could investigate thoroughly, uncover the truth, and find your sister. However, the cost could be severe. You might be ostracized by your family, with no home to return to, and it could even impact your career. Think it over carefully. If I don't seek the truth, if I don't find my sister, wouldn't the cost to my conscience be just as severe for the rest of my life? No need to think it over. If my sister is still alive, no matter where she is, I will bring her home. If she is no longer with us, whoever is responsible will pay. I used to be trapped in self-blame and guilt, with a limited perspective. Looking back now, only in the first 2 years after my sister disappeared did my parents post missing person notices everywhere and offer rewards online. After that, it just faded away. They let a child bear all the blame, showing everyone through their actions that it was all my fault. My family isolated me for 15 years, forcing me to remember my faults every moment. Several times, I stood on the rooftop, thinking of closing my eyes and jumping off to end it all. But the thought that I hadn't found my sister yet, not even knowing if she was alive or dead, made me realize I couldn't die yet. What if she's still alive, waiting for me to find her, or if someone harmed her, waiting for me to avenge her? It's been 15 years. Sister, where have you gone? Sister misses you so much. I looked calmly at this united and vengeful family, pulled out the walkie-talkie, and said, Master, it's time to move, as the police waited outside and entered the courtyard. My grandmother sat down abruptly on the ground, mumbling, I've confessed to the Lord, I've confessed, and it should be fine. My colleagues took away my furious father, my gritting mother, and my trembling grandmother, leaving behind my brother who glared at me angrily. He was almost as tall as me now, his fists clenched tightly. I approached him and said, Go home, you're 13 now, you can take care of yourself. If you have any difficulties, you can come to me, you're not at fault. And neither am I. Did you know, you once had a younger sister, small and cute. She disappeared 15 years ago. I just want to bring her back. The cost might be high, but I want to give her justice. If one day you disappeared, wouldn't you hope someone would persistently search for you? His head slowly bowed, his fists unclenched, and he walked out of the yard step by step without saying a word, after everyone had left. I walked around my grandmother's yard and finally stopped in front of a tree, staring at the tree. Tears gradually filled my eyes. Then, Mark called, Yetta, your grandmother is feigning unconsciousness and not cooperating. Your parents are causing a scene. Without key evidence, we'll be at a disadvantage. I wiped my tears and choked up. Master, I think I found my sister. Could you please come here and bring a forensic expert and 2 criminal investigation colleagues? After hanging up, I picked up the shovel from the corner and started digging under the tree, tears dropping into the soil one by one. When I was at the police academy, my field investigation instructor once told us that when searching for bodies in the wild, especially in vegetated areas, the vegetation around the burial site of a corpse tends to be particularly dark and green. A human body is excellent fertilizer. An adult body contains about 2.6 kilograms of nitrogen, most of which can be converted into ammonia, a common nitrogen fertilizer, during the decomposition process. If the decomposition of a body affects 3 square meters of soil, the nitrogen it contributes is roughly 50 times the recommended quarterly nitrogen amount for temperate trees and shrubs. This can cause the plants in that area to appear noticeably greener than similar plants nearby, as the increased nitrogen content in the leaves helps boost chlorophyll production. I remember asking him, don't other animals provide nitrogen as well? Why specifically human bodies? He replied, only human bodies cause a significant change in plants for 2 reasons. First, the decomposition rate of human bodies is quite different from that of other animals. Second, human bodies contain cadmium. Cadmium is a heavy metal that is easily absorbed by plant roots. Once it reaches the leaves, it can alter the structure of a protein complex called the photosystem in the chloroplasts, affecting the color of the leaves and making the plant stand out from its surroundings. After my sister disappeared, I seldom visited my grandmother's yard. I didn't dare to return even during the new year after starting university. Thus, I never noticed this tree. Mark brought 3 robust young men who took off their shirts and started digging vigorously. The body was buried deep, about 2 meters underground. The tree roots had grown deep into the bones, making them difficult to remove. The forensic expert carefully chopped off the roots with an axe and placed the bones piece by piece on a shroud. Wearing rubber gloves, I gently touched the slender bones and sobbed uncontrollably. The second summer after my sister disappeared, a melon grew under this tree. Its long vines wrapped around the tree, and I was drawn by the scent of the fruit. At the root of the melon, I found a tooth that looked just like one of my sister's. I asked my grandmother, and she said it was a tooth my sister had lost when she was younger, so I didn't think much of it. She had lost her 5th tooth the day before she disappeared, holding it in her palm and asking me to throw it onto the roof. How foolish was I not to realize that the morning of the day my sister disappeared, I had eaten a whole melon, and that melon vine had grown from her stomach. I was so foolish, I cried inconsolably. October 9th, 2024, Mark's interrogation made a breakthrough, and after relentless efforts, grandmother Monica and blind William agreed to testify in court. Faced with the evidence, my grandmother and parents confessed. Back then, your parents were rural residents, so they were allowed a second child. Unexpectedly, your sister was born, and initially, they accepted her. Your father even used his connections to get a job in a state-owned enterprise. securing a city residence registration, but later, when your sister developed asthma and it seemed she wouldn't live long, they harbored unthinkable thoughts. At that time, there was a policy that allowed families, whether rural or urban, to have another child if their only child was disabled or had an incurable severe illness, so actually, it was a wrongful death. They initially intended to kill you because only by killing you could your father avoid losing his hard-earned job and city registration, and still be eligible for another child. Mark looked at me with immense sympathy. I was in shock, unable to recover for a long time, not knowing what to say. The reason it was your sister who ended up being killed was that the three of them hadn't coordinated their plan properly. Your grandmother had made an agreement with your parents. But your parents decided which child would deliver the meal the next day. No one saw your sister that day because as soon as she stepped out, the grandmother living next door quietly called her over, gave her a bowl of sweetened water, and after she drank it, she collapsed. Your father had returned home an hour before waking you up to bury the body. After burying her, he then came home to find you. They chose the afternoon for this grim task because the sun was strongest then and there was no one on the street. What they didn't anticipate was that although blind William didn't open his door, he still heard your father's footsteps. Not long after he passed, the radio announced it was 1:00 p.m. So, when your father mentioned that he discovered your sister was missing after 2:00 p.m., blind William knew he was lying. When your father arrived at your grandmother's house at the prearranged time, he realized he had killed the wrong person, but it was too late to change anything. This mistake is one of the reasons you later faced hostility from them. In their original plan, you were the child who was supposed to die. They had already dug a hole under a tree and buried your sister there. To cover their tracks, they covered the wet soil with dry dirt and scattered chicken feed over it, so no one noticed anything unusual. Your mother was an accomplice, to cover up the crime. They devised a plan and staged a drama, making you, who was supposed to be dead, the scapegoat, thus misleading the police investigation. Perhaps my face looked too dreadful, as Mark handed me a glass of water, but my hands were shaking so much that I could barely hold the glass. It turned out, my sister died in my place. It turned out, I was supposed to be the one to die. Mark sighed and took the glass from my hand. There are still two doubts about the case. First, according to forensic results, your sister died from arsenic trioxide poisoning, a poison your father secretly brought from the chemical plant where he worked. Due to strict checks, he couldn't bring much, but the amount was enough to kill a child within half an hour. However, according to your grandmother's account, your sister almost immediately began having difficulty breathing after drinking the sweetened water and died within 5 minutes, which she found unbelievable. The second doubt is odd. Although they confessed to the murder, no one admitted to putting sleeping pills or hypnotic substances in your drink. Your mother admitted she had been buying sleeping pills because she had trouble sleeping, but she denied drugging you. The family enemy who was suspected has several alibis, so it wasn't him either. I am wondering if our assumption might be wrong, and there were no sleeping pills involved. Maybe you really were just mildly heatstruck that day. I shook my head firmly, my lips trembling. No, master, it definitely wasn't heat stroke. Your deduction is correct. I think I know who did it. As one of the witnesses in this case, I request that a senior hypnotist perform hypnosis on me to recall the details of that day, details I might have missed or forgotten. October 10th, 2024, at 2 p.m., the hypnotist performed hypnosis on me, and the main process is described as follows. Hypnotist: now, you're back to August 10th, 2009, at 11 a.m., you and your sister are at home. What are you doing? Me: cooking. Hypnotist: is it hot? Me: yes, very. I was sweating a lot. Hypnotist: did you drink a lot of water? Did you get it yourself? Me: yes, I drank a lot. I didn't have time to get it myself. It was my sister who handed it to me. Hypnotherapist: what's different about the water's color and smell today? I paused for a moment. It seems like there's some powder in the water, and it smells a bit off. Hypnotherapist: was anyone else at home at that time? Me: no. Hypnotherapist: how did you feel after cooking? Me: tired, weak, sleepy, and dizzy. Hypnotherapist: how was your sister feeling that day? Me: she was unusually clingy, wouldn't let go of me. Hypnotherapist: now, try to recall every gesture and expression your sister made before she left with the food. Me: she tried to joke with me, but she wasn't laughing. Instead, she seemed on the verge of tears. As she picked up the basket to leave, she casually grabbed something from the corridor and slipped it into her pocket. Hypnotherapist, what was in the corridor? Think carefully. I paused again. The salted radish we dried last year. After saying this, my body began to convulse uncontrollably, a sign of intense emotional distress. The hypnotherapy session was immediately stopped, and I was quickly brought out of the hypnotic state. My sister had a severe allergic reaction to the salted radish, which had damaged her airways. The doctor had warned us repeatedly that eating any more could be fatal, so she was trying to. I choked up, unable to continue. She was risking her own life to save you. Mark's eyes also reddened. She drugged you with sleeping pills, intending to deliver the food herself, to ensure her death. She ate a piece of salted radish before leaving, which is why she passed away so quickly after drinking the sugary water your grandmother gave her. Such a young child. Yetta, your sister really loved you. Her chronic illness made her sensitive and paranoid. She often overheard the adults talking, knew she was considered a burden by the family, understood their ruthless attitudes, and that's why it felt as though my heart was being pierced by 10,000 needles, bleeding slowly. Yet I couldn't shed a tear. Mark patted my shoulder. Yetta, live well. This is your sister's final blessing to you. Your life is now doubly precious. After the case was submitted to the court, my parents asked to see me. I hesitated for a moment but decided to meet them. Yetta, you've destroyed our family. For one girl, you ruined not only your mother's and my happiness in our old age, but also your brother's future, my father said, looking at me as if I were an enemy. My mother bitterly added, if you hadn't clung to it, no one would have cared about the life or death of a sickly girl. It would have been better if you had died that year. My eyes reddened as I replied, yes, I would have rather died that year, giving my sister the chance to live. She was so sensible, so adorable, only 8 years old. You didn't care about her, but I cared. We cared about each other. Now, sending you to court, to prison, I feel relieved. With that, I smiled bitterly. You two debt-collecting, worthless scum. Your lives together aren't worth as much as my son's. What do you know? In the countryside, not having a son means enduring scorn and bullying. What's wrong with what we did? People with such different values can never truly communicate. I shook my head, stood up, and said, enjoy your time in prison. Then I turned and left. I reburied my sister's remains and planted her favorite daisies on her grave. Every weekend, I bring a bowl of noodles that I made myself, place it on her grave, and chat with her. Don't be afraid, sister, your big sister will always be with you. If there's a next life, let's be twin sisters. May we have parents who love us then. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.